This is going to be a show about respect, about us giving you, the listener, respect, and you giving it to us in return. Giving respect, getting respect, and family. These are the things that make life important. And we're going to talk about a film that shows just how you can become a man of respect, a man of honor, to run your own family, be it a podcast or the Gambino crime family.
Will, to get control over this podcast family, you need all 5 girls that listen to this show.
We are talking about, honestly, I think like over the run of like the movies we talked about on this show, I think maybe the most extraordinary movie we've done
Absolutely.
on the show.
None comparable.
This is
comparable.
This is a movie that like we're like is in terms of budget and like casting is like more professionally done than The Room. But at the end of the day, every bit as baffling and perplexing as that movie, despite its ostensibly professional cast and
people whose
production.
job it is to do that stuff.
No.
Astounding.
We are talking about the film Gotti.
Yeah, the boss, baby.
Starring John Travolta as John Gotti.
The capo di tutti capi.
The boss of all bosses. But before we do that, we've enlisted some help, some friends of ours.
These some friends of ours, you know what I mean.
Some friends of ours to talk about this thing called respect. It's Mike Recine.
Thank you.
And Adam Friedland.
Thanks for having me. Adam,
I think time out. Adam showed inadequate
Adam,
respect.
that was not a lot of respect in that introduction. Adam, I was showing you respect, but I got
you
nothing in return.
You come to our podcast, and this is how you treat us.
Do you notice he didn't even take off his hat when he came in here?
Sorry.
Adam's still wearing his bucket hat.
Don't this is not respect.
Hey, guys, good Shabbos and respect to all of you. Thank you for having me. That movie was the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen in my entire life.
No, you say that, but we all saw it on Friday, and honestly, I had more fun in the theater watching this movie than almost anything I've seen in recent memory, without a doubt.
It was a blast.
We definitely ruined that old man's day. There's probably enjoy it.
There's an old man wearing Fila's and black dress socks and shorts
and a tank top,
and he got mad at us for laughing too much during the movie. We were not.
We were not showing respect to the Don.
Yeah.
I saw it in Kips Bay, which is like a weird enclave for people from Queens to be shuttled in and out of Manhattan. And you know how they say, like, this was the most, dollars per movie theater for a thing, an award that Avatar won and retains to this day, by the way. But I don't know if Gotti accomplished that. I don't think they got that much money per individual theater, per room, per screen. But it's probably the most op-eds ever written per theater. Because everyone in my theater looked like they write 10... letters to the editor every day to the New York Daily News about overhearing rap music in Astoria.
Well,
like,
I mean,
they're a bunch of trolls behind a keyboard.
I love that. Who are you going to trust? People that saw the movie or you seeing the trailer?
Well, that is ultimately what convinced me. I didn't even think we were going to do an episode on this. I just wanted to see a movie on Friday, and ultimately this is what convinced me that this movie would be worth seeing, was the publicity campaign that sort of leaned into the universally awful reviews. 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. The fact that this was uniformly panned.
Well, John Gotti Jr. liked it.
That's true. Well, he's sort of the hero of the movie in a way. It's like
they should have called it John Gotti Jr. That's my takeaway.
So the publicity campaign for the movie taking aim at the reviewers of the movie and
these gruel loser bastards,
and striking a sort of populist tone that's very of the time, shall we say, to attack the
fake news,
the eggheads and the fake news that are telling you not to see this movie, but telling you, the public, the people with respect, that you got to see the movie in order to get respect.
I will say, I think it worked in the sense that I think everyone who voted for Donald Trump in the New York metropolitan area is probably also pro John Gotti.
Yes.
And so if you can get all of them to see this movie, you're in.
This another.
No, it's gonna be. They're gonna love it for years to come. I honestly think that this is going to be the Rocky Horror Picture Show for guys who are medically prohibited from wearing turtlenecks.
This was another interesting side note about this movie. It was directed by Kevin Connolly of Entourage
E from
fame.
Entourage.
E from Entourage.
Who was potentially on ecstasy the entire time he was making the movie. Because
he was on something this is a movie in which is so singularly incompetent in every aspect of its execution that it becomes art in a way. It becomes a kind of genius. Because it's it would. I was worried going into this movie that it would just suck and be boring.
Yes.
It would just be
Not
bad.
the case.
But no, this movie was bad in such a shining, shimmering way that
Such a specific. It's like you watch this movie and it's bad in a way where all the bad things come together to form this mosaic of an entire mindset and culture. It's literally an educational experience.
You know what was so brilliant about it is that it perfectly mimics the way that a stupid guy who lies all the time tells you a story.
Yeah.
Like, it's disjointed. Characters are technically introduced, but then we don't know anything about them and they don't do anything, and then we reference something that they've done. So, like, every time a character comes up, John Gotti will go, "Oh, who's that fucking jerk off?" And Stacy Keach will go, That's Joey Meatballs." And then Joey Meatballs will flash and text across the screen.
Yeah.
And then the guy Joey Meatballs is talking to is going, "Joey Meatballs, my favorite member of the Mafia." And then we won't see him for 20 minutes, and it'll show up. It'll be like, "Remember that thing he did?"
Yeah.
And you'll be like, "No." Because it's like, it's a guy who's lying to you, but he doesn't even remember what he did or didn't lie to you about.
I think interesting that it's directed by E from Entourage because this movie literally is, if any of those shitty movies that they pitched
Escobar, isn't
Vinny
it?
Chase to do in Entourage,
Yeah.
if any of those actually became a movie, it would be this. Or even more on point, if you remember from the first season of The Sopranos, when the first screenplay Christopher is working on, and it shows a screenshot of the laptop, and there's just this line of dialogue, "I must be loyal to my capo." If that screenplay got made, it would be this movie exactly. And also if the real Christopher Moltisanti directed and produced it as well. Like, this is exactly, like, the worldview of the movie, the dialogue of it, and the execution is exactly what if Christopher Moltisanti were a real person that wanted to make his vision of his own life, this is what it would be.
Well, I don't know. If you guys keep trashing this movie, I'm going to vote for Trump again. Me and my whole family. Fuck you.
So let's dive in. Let's start from the beginning of this film. So we get in there, we sit down, and I swear to God, from the very first scene of this movie, I knew it was going to be special. Imagine, if you will, lights go down, screen comes up. What do you see? The beautiful night Manhattan skyline, New York City at night. Cut to the East River. It's an elderly gentleman wearing a sort of luxurious winter coat. Is leaning over the railing, looking out at Queens and the night sky. He turns around, and is John Travolta wearing a ridiculous wig and fake eyebrows, who breaks the fourth wall, turns to the camera and you, the audience, and says, "New York, the greatest city in the world." And at that point, honestly, like me, Adam, Brendan, Matt, we all stood up and clapped.
Yeah.
I saluted the screen at that point. Like,
No, it was like
At my screening, I kneeled.
What do? You kneel.
That's
Forget about it.
I
You
was
bafangu.
instantly shot 57 times by the 75-year-old moviegoers from Ozone Park who all had 38 Derringers and their black dress socks.
they should have played the national anthem at the beginning.
Yeah.
That would've been
However,
cool.
I complained that they didn't.
instead of the national anthem, it has that amazing opening, and then it just jumps straight into the opening credits, which is a montage of real news footage of the real John Gotti at all his various trials.
A lot of archival footage throughout the film.
It's a montage. It's like an upbeat newsreel montage of the real John Gotti, set to music by the rapper Pitbull. like probably the corniest, most bullshit rapper.
It was an
alive.
original song, right?
not
It was an original song for the film.
Are
I
you
believe.
serious?
With
Oh, was it?
Leona Lewis, I believe.
If it was original for the movie, then that is even more genius because it's one of the classic movie closing song credit sequence where the song tells you what the movie's about.
Yeah.
So Pitbull's rapping and he's like, "Listen, y'all, it's the mob. There's a code. Gotta live by the code or they'll kill you."
But I think
My son got run over.
That was my favorite scene.
I think
That was excellent.
even more incredible is there is a non-diegetic Pitbull song in the 80s.
What?
Like,
no, he's just saying that like they play it over stuff in the 80s.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah.
Like, no, they're listening to it in the 80s. They're like, oh, yeah, we got some Pitbull songs 20 years early. They fell off the truck.
So we get that credit sequence, and again, I think the real John Gotti would probably be very insulted to have any kind of Pitbull music associated with him.
Where's
It is an interesting
Sinatra?
choice to use hip hop because, as we all know, the blacks are jealous of us. They want to be us.
The original.
They copy our culture.
That's so good to be like a cultural appropriation guy, but Italian. Like, I know. Those are my favorite memes on Facebook. Are the ones where it's like gangsters, and it's just like any black person at all who's like not in a gang, and then it's like gangsters, real gentlemen who wore suits, and it's like Al Capone who murdered like 7,800 people and had syphilis and tried to fish in his swimming pool because his brain was so rotted by the end of his life. You're like, that's a man.
It's cool he had sex.
You don't see any of those rapper types having
Hey
sex.
Al, hey Al, congrats on the sex. So the movie begins, and it's of course the narration stays with it because they
Thank
need to like if there was no narration, this movie would literally be just a disjointed collection of things happening.
Yeah.
They would be even more incomprehensible.
And he goes, "You either end up dead or in jail. Me, I got both."
Not like all those other immortal people in jail.
right.
I love that, Mike. Yeah, that was right after he said New York is the greatest city in the world. What I love about that is like I did both. So he just said he's finding a cool way of saying, "Hey, I died in jail."
Unlike Al Capone, who's still alive.
I love, like Carlo Gambino dies of old age peacefully because he wasn't a fucking idiot like Gotti. He's like, yeah, but the life came for him finally at age 90.
We're gonna find out who did this to you, Carlo.
Oh, this cancer prick. That's how fuck cancer shirts started. All right, I'm starting a new thing of ours. It's called The Child. And you become a made guy by wearing a shirt that says fuck cancer to a charity 5K to buy more shirts that say fuck cancer.
So Gotti begins, we begin to learn the story of his rise to power and how John Gotti became the boss.
The boss of bosses.
And apparently the story begins when he was, a Gambino family associate who was tasked by his superior, played by Stacy Keach.
Everyone in this movie is like 90 years old. There's not a single like young actor.
Other than the guy who played John Gotti Jr.
He's probably secretly 57.
So his sort of boss figure, played by Stacy Keach, tells him, that there's some crime where someone's kid was kidnapped. They paid the ransom and they still murdered the kid. And, the mafia is like, hey, kidnapping's one thing, but if you pay and they still kill the kid, we're not going to abide by that. So he's saying, I'm giving this to you personally. This is a personal matter for the Gambino family.
Get me the guy who's always going to prison.
So he makes his bones.
And he goes, "It would be my honor."
Yeah.
We all laughed when that. Yeah.
So he makes his bones killing some hapless asshole.
By the way, a botched killing. They were trying to grab the guy out of a bar and take him off and kill him somewhere nice and quiet, but instead he fought them and he just panicked and pulled a gun out and shot him in the bar in front of people in the bar who later identified him.
Yeah.
So like the big crime that's like is coming out to show what a fucking awesome criminal he was is one that he fucked up and immediately was caught for.
Well, when it's 3-on-1 with a squad and you knock somebody, you have to thirst them because what if your squad needs heals?
Okay.
Like what if Gotti's guys were trapped in the storm before they got to the bar?
All right.
John Gotti double pumped.
Yeah, moving on.
He's talking about video games.
So, then of course he goes to jail for that crime again. And then in one sequence, he explains that through bribery, he was able to get furloughs for dental work.
Yeah, that was pimp.
And he leaves the prison, goes to the dentist's office, changes in the dentist's office, comes out of it into a cool suit, and then he's like, there's a few loose ends from that hit I did I needed to clean up, and we were all like, what loose ends?
I only
What
left
is this?
48 witnesses.
And then it shows him just walking into a motel room with a woman inside it, going to the shower and shooting the guy in the shower 6 times, and then leaving, not killing the woman. Again, movie does not even bother to
I think
explain.
it
said-
implies
says
that
who that
she
was.
helped him.
Yeah, because he says
Yeah,
good
yeah.
job.
work. She
Good
says-
work. Yeah.
But maybe I actually think I have a fan theory about this that I've been arguing with on the Gotti Wikia about this. That perhaps he didn't hire her and Gotti just heard her having sex and was like, "Oh, good, what you did good at having sex with that guy."
Oh yeah,
before
yeah.
I killed him.
Congrats on the sex.
Yeah,
So it's-
exactly.
Again, I just need to underscore like the overall staggering incompetence of every aspect of the like just pacing, writing.
No
editing.
scene relates
Nope.
to the following scene. It is a collection of sketches.
Yes.
Many times one line or even half of a sentence, and then it immediately cuts to a completely different thought,
Yep.
an idea. It's if it wasn't telling the life of one person, it would be so baffling and confusing. This entire
Yeah,
movie.
it's like you just take any 10 minutes of the movie, the thing you'll see is like John Gotti talking to one of his kids and being like, if you want to be a man, the first thing you got to learn is how to be strong. And the first thing you got to learn about being strong is respect. But the first thing you got to learn about respect is being strong. And then cut to like a bunch of fat old guys in a garage, and then they have a tense conversation and shoot like a third fat old guy in the head. Cut to some fucking social function at John Gotti's house where he's like, whoa, now they got these things, push pops. You can decide how much ice cream you want.
Can I be excused? I miss my grandpa.
And then it will cut to an entire unedited video local news report from the 1980s
Yeah, like
about
a
one of their crimes.
3-minute like
Yeah.
news report.
To explain one of the awesome crimes that Gotti does, instead of dramatizing it in any way, they just show an entire remote report for a local news station. It goes on forever, and the guy's talking like local witness Frank Pulowski says that he saw a car. It's like no information that is any way meaningful to anyone, and delivered by an old guy in the 80s.
I mean, I don't know, man.
Up next is Sal with sports.
You get that. I mean, it is so hard to get a license for a local news report from 1985 on Long Island. You just got to use it if you got it. It's like
Yeah.
Rolling Stone songs.
I want to get to that crime that is again completely obscured by archival news footage. But before we get there, I want to go to one of my favorite scenes early in the movie where it begins to try to sort of sketch out what it exactly, in case you weren't familiar with the Mafia or John Gotti, like exactly who he is and what they do. Because another staggering thing about this movie is the absolute lack of actual crimes being committed.
Yes.
Other than bird brain murders for which the perpetrators are immediately sent to jail for like
And
a
correct-
million life sentences.
Yeah, they only kill bad guys, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a complete like fluff piece on John Gotti's life. He
Yeah.
only killed bad guys. He never did crimes. He talked about running books in Ozone Park.
Yeah, this is early
only
in the movie.
crime.
They
Brought
showed
us
them-
the fireworks.
He brought
honestly-
the community fireworks.
You
You know what John Gotti was? John Gotti was Italian Sons of Anarchy.
That's what
Because
it is. Yeah.
every crime he does immediately indicts 35 people. I can only name like 2 or 3 profitable operations they had, but the community loves him because once a year he throws a party where he's like, oh, you want to get some hot dogs with marinara on it? You want to get some disgustingly wet chicken wings? But my friend in the Mafia who looks like James Comey for some reason is cooking.
But that's just it. Is that they don't in this one they don't show them doing any profitable crimes.
Yeah.
Like, if you didn't know what the Mafia was and you watched this movie, you would think, yeah, it's a club for old guys to like yell at each other and then sometimes get killed.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you would have to think that John Gotti made money in the GTA way, where it's like you kill somebody, respect increased.
Yeah, like everybody he shoots turns into gold coins because they don't show them doing anything, doing hijackings. They say explicitly, "We don't deal drugs because that's for the animals."
That's the greatest mafia
And it's
propaganda.
Absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
But they don't show him hijacking. They talk about gambling, but only this guy saying, "Stop telling people to use stop that guy from using my name when he does gambling." So that means we know that guy isn't gay. Like they don't do any crimes.
I want to talk about that scene. Like, so this is your first impression of what the Mafia is about. It shows Travolta and a couple like similarly ludicrous looking people like doing Italian face walk out of one of their social clubs.
Olive oil face, it's called.
Yeah. You walk out of one of their social clubs in Queens, like the
in Howard Beach.
Yeah, the Hunt and Fish Club in Howard Beach.
JFK.
And Travolta's like, pointing with his pinky out. And as Matt was saying, he's like, this Greek guy, I don't like him. He's making book. He's using my name. You tell him to fucking cut it out. And like that's basically the only instance you get of like any crime that's not just associated with directly murdering people who they've felt disrespect from.
Yeah.
But
it's just like a murderous Kiwanis club.
right after he mentions the guy making book, and another little bit of local flavor. There's an old woman pushing a grocery cart home, and Travolta stops his goons and just goes, "Oh, help this lady out." And it's like, well, she's pushing a cart. She doesn't need help carrying it. So to show that they're helping this old lady and they love the community, one of the guys puts his big meaty hands just on her back and just sort of guides. So he doesn't actually help her.
Yeah, then the boxer. Yeah,
the boxer with like severe CTE walks up to him, and this guy looks in no way athletic whatsoever. He looks like
he just wakes up and goes to a Dunkin' Donuts for 15 hours.
Yeah, a guy that like literally just sits in a Dunkin' Donuts and steals napkins all day. And that's his racket. He's a napkin thief.
Oh, that guy's a good earner.
He comes to the back of the pork store with Dunkin' Donuts napkins.
He's like, oh, I did good today.
They don't make you pay. Anyway, so this guy comes up to him and he's like, hey, what's the matter? You not fighting anymore, champ? What's going on? He's like, oh, they had to close the gym down, John. It's like the equivalent of like, they had to close the teen rec center, John. And he's like, don't worry, I'll work it out for you. Don't worry. And then no mention of the boxing or the gym.
Well, it was such a good insight into the people who are pro Gotti / pro Trump, because it's like anything bad they do is contained in their own world. But also, you never follow up the question of why they have so much money. So it's just like, in the badger brains of the people who are like pro Gotti / pro Trump in New York, they're like, oh yeah, so this guy, he just sat down all day and he would have some fucking spaghetti argument with some other old piece of shit and kill him, and it would just sprout $1 million for him, and he used that $1 million for non-specific community like John Gotti is what every conservative thinks about Obama. He's like a fake
community organizer.
He's like, oh yeah, I'll open up that rec center again. Oh shit, we spent our entire community budget this year on a barbecue with one grill.
The cool thing about this movie, I don't know if we're distracting from the plot,
no,
but
it's fine.
John Travolta is one of my favorite actors, especially John Travolta at this stage, because he is so desperate to convince the public that he does not spend his entire life trying to jerk off male masseuses. Right? So he just is like, that's who he is, and he will deny it. He's like in the Church of Scientology. His kid died under mysterious circumstances, but he in
that was
every
him getting
role.
into character.
Have you seen
movie.
To Paris with what is it called? To Paris with Love or something?
I saw that in theaters
with John Travolta, where it's one of the only movies where he goes full bald, which is he's been bald since like 1981.
He's a rug man all the way.
Yeah, he's a rug man for sure. But that movie's insane too. But he is desperate to convince the public that he is not just trying to jack off every single guy that comes in his with a 5 foot radius.
I just want to say, Frank Terranova told me that Travolta's not gay, and the thing with the gay rumor is that you can't deny it. So
no, you have to embrace it.
Yeah,
I guess so.
Yeah,
and also, his real life wife is in the movie too. Kelly
She plays
Preston,
Victoria
who does
Gotti.
play his wife.
She's also doing olive oil face, and maybe one of the, like, you could do a fucking Razzies just of the performances in this movie, and they'd all be nominated, and then you'd have to pick one, and they'd be very
I still
difficult.
think the funniest thing to happen in the last 10 years was when he was at the Oscars and he was like on Quaaludes or I don't know what it is, and he was introducing the singer Idina Menzel, and he said, everyone knows I love musicals. Everyone, please welcome singing Let It Go from Frozen, Adele Dazeem. He took the name Adina Menzel and he turned it into Adele Dazeed. He's like fully illiterate. He's trying to jack off everyone around him. Allegedly. And he's like a member of an alien cult. And he just wants the public to think he is Danny Zuko still.
Well, here's the real meta thing. In like 50 years from now, when the guy from the Entourage reboot makes the Travolta movie, and it's not going to show him doing acting at all. He's just famous for no reason. And it's like, look, he stayed in his own community of Scientology. He got money by jacking off these masseuses, and he was just a cool guy.
We were talking about it, and like, what's so funny is to contrast Travolta's performance as Gotti with his performance as Robert Shapiro in American Crime Story,
which was so good,
which I thought was brilliant. It was just
oh my god, yeah,
so funny and on point. But what was so funny is they look identical.
Yes,
they're wearing the same dumb wig and big bushy eyebrows
and the Italian suits.
But it is so funny the difference between him playing a character that's like that where the writers are in on the joke and Shapiro is a laughable figure,
right?
And the ones in Gotti where the writers obviously are not in on the joke at all.
No. Talk about fucking cults. Those people
I realize that in trying to describe the plot of this movie is probably a fool's errand because it's impossible. There really is no plot. Things just happen at this weird clip. Nothing is again, no one scene is related to a scene that comes prior to it.
Nope.
Things happen with no regard or no effect on the plot later.
The only actual plot elements are exposition scenes where Stacy Keach just lists 15 Italian guys in a row that you don't know and have no concept, where he's like, well, to do this, you're going to need Tony Caligliano, Stevie Vesuvio, Sancho Panza, Sacco, Vanzetti. That is how that like plot is established.
Yeah, there really was no distinction between the periphery characters, like at all.
Well, there was like probably other than Travolta as Gotti himself, there's probably 2 or 3 other characters that like you could identify as a viewer like as a distinct character, including his son and the Stacy Keach character. Everyone other than that just exists in this like weird, vague, like they all like there's no distinguishing any of them. They come and go.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of potato people in tracksuits.
Here's what I want to say though. We'll get into each of our favorite scenes and moments of dialogue in the movie, but like what early on the movie tries to establish is that like, you know, when you're in the life and the life really matters to these guys, the life is about the code. You know, it's about the code and these life and death rules that they follow, and that's what makes them men of honor and respect, and what keeps their criminal fraternity together. The writers of the movie and filmmakers clearly take this shit seriously.
Yes,
but the actual movie itself and Gotti's true to life story would be proof positive that no one actually cares about these rules, and they break them at will all the time.
And that was the great thing about Sopranos too. It's like you see these guys who believe in this stuff their whole life, and then they realize that it's like wrong.
Yeah, they're aliens basically. Like they're dinosaurs living in the modern world. That's why The Sopranos was so great.
Yeah, The Sopranos was like they did all these little things that indicated to you that these guys weren't cool. Like the malapropisms on The Sopranos were brilliant because it was a very subtle way of showing that they're completely alien from society and think they're a lot smarter than they actually are. But in this movie, just John Gotti's the coolest fucking guy in every room. Like when they sentence him to life and then like order his court fees, he's like, the life sentence I could take, but the $50 fee, it's like, oh, this guy's so awesome.
Yeah, he has like 3 or 4 like charm moments where he's supposed to be witty and clever, and they're all just pig shit stupid. And that's the thing about this movie is that you'd think, well, yeah, he probably was not very clever. Criminals in movies are always way more clever than real criminals are. And that's why this is like the most, in its own way, realistic mob movie of all time, because it's from the point of view, like the actual point of view of people in this milieu, as opposed to every other mob movie that is good, quote unquote, which is written by somebody who's outside of it and is critical of it. And is like has a remove and distance and judgment of it. This is people who they do not taste the water. They don't know they're in water. They're fishes. They don't know they're in water, and they're just making this like, here it is. This is the thing about these guys is they got a code, and they got respect, and they take care of the community and the families.
Speaking of that code,
it's like those are literally gibberish that you're just spouting.
One of the things that again the outer borough Gotti / Trump supporter, if you ask them why they idolize someone like John Gotti, one of the things they'll tell you is like, hey, They may do these murders, but it's only people who are in the life. There's they don't
They got a code.
They don't do they don't do violence to people who are just civilians or whatever. One of the first major plot points in the movie shows Gotti doing exactly that. This is a true thing that happened, but one of Gotti's kids
Dude,
was
say allegedly. I don't want to get sued by John Gotti.
one of John Gotti's kids was allegedly mowed down by a car. He was just riding his bike in the middle of the street in Howard Beach, and some guy hit him with a car, killed him. His young son, and we know he was
Hilarious.
his young son because, again, the young son is introduced about a minute before he gets hit by
literally
a car.
before.
He
Literally
got straight
before.
A's. He doesn't even have hair on his prick.
No, they show him in
My
bed.
son had a tiny ass dick, and now he's dead. Marie, get over here. We're starting another.
penis.
You did too many fucking aerobics, and you almost gave him a clit, and that's why he's dead.
He goes up to the corpse of the kid on the street after getting hit by the car, and he just peeks inside of his shorts. And he's like, "God damn it!"
One single pubic hair. That's my boy.
He didn't even
And he
have
took
it as a
pubes.
collector's item.
I don't think he's mine. The pubes are too straight. Oh no!
In case people think Adam's joking, that is actually a line of dialogue from the movie of Gotti's grief at the death of his child is he didn't even have hair on his prick. So what does Gotti do to the driver of this car, who again wasn't in the life? He's abducted and killed. But again, the movie does not show you this on screen. It only refers you to actual news footage of the event. So talk about a whitewash of this guy's life. They could have actually dramatized and shown the moment of kidnapping and then torturing to death some terrified schmuck who was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, even with that scene, they still kind of glorified it because they were like, he didn't even fix the dent on his car.
Oh, yeah.
you know? So
He's still parking it where
It's like-
Maria can see.
This is not way to respect the family.
Well, like-
it's really not even the killing the kid. It's the disrespect.
Like every fucking auto repair shop in the tri-state area wasn't owned by someone who knew John Gotti. It wasn't called like Denunzio Albertino Bumper Repair, and all their bumper repairs were just people who ran people over on purpose.
Yeah, no, and then after his kid dies, he goes to the social club and there's a bunch of sweaty men out front. And I remember saying out loud in the theater, "Respect incoming." The whole movie is it's like Italian Dragon Ball Z, where they're just assessing respect levels the entire time, and they're like, "My God, Vegeta's respect levels are higher than I thought possible."
Travolta does have Vegeta's hairline in this movie. So he's the prince of respect.
I have a working theory. I think Kevin Connolly got really nervous the night before directing this movie.
Yeah.
And then
because he did direct it all in one day.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
And I think he just got some guy from China to do it for him, and he just showed him Goodfellas once. It would make a lot more sense if the person that directed this movie did not speak English.
Yes.
It would make a lot more sense.
What they took like 15 mob movie scripts and ran them through Babelfish to Japanese, and then put them back into English,
Yeah.
and then they just assembled them at random.
This is the first gangster movie ever made by the first build of Skynet. It's like they took all the marginal qualities that people like in other mob movies, like the sort of jokey banter and camaraderie of Goodfellas,
And the narration.
the
too.
narration, the intensity, but none of the thing where the plot can be followed by anyone at all, or who any of the characters are.
Yeah, they're just
It's
these
fine.
blobs.
We're joking around here. We're having a good time, but do you guys have the balls to criticize Islam?
Yeah, there are a lot of characters that are introduced way too late in the Quran.
Yeah. I really wish they would have gone into the mafia offering the federal government help after 9/11 as another point in how they were actually good guys.
I love that one because
Yeah,
what was help? It's I saw an Arab yesterday.
Well, it's funny because that harkens back to World War II when the government did enlist the help of Lucky Luciano, but it was really only, I mean, the ostensible, what they said they were doing was that, hey, we know the mob controls the ports in New York.
The docks,
So
yeah.
the docks or whatever, we're going to make sure that no Nazis sneak in. And, we need Lucky to do that. But really what they were doing was making sure that unions wouldn't organize on those same docks. That's true, by the way.
Well, unions were started by Nazis. My name is Dinesh D'Souza, and this is the big lie.
Yeah, National Socialists.
Sorry, I'm just
Organized labor, organized death camps.
I'm thinking back to the line about he didn't even have hair on his prick. I would like if the next scene when they're all gathered at the social club and like everyone's paying their respects and they like some guys from the neighborhood, some neighborhood kids come up and they're like, Mr. Gotti, we heard your kid didn't have no hair on his prick. We'd like to give you some odds.
So fucking funny.
This is give him a big bag of pubes.
This is a tradition from the old country. It's called Tributo Simano.
You're giving your pubes to Mr. Gotti.
Here's another amazing thing from this movie. We speak about like how some like early on in the movie they'd be like that guy over there, that's Angelo Ruggiero, and then the screen will pause to show you Angelo Ruggiero.
Who was a rat, by the way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like the absurd overuse of name and location cues. At random moments, they'll just be like, it'll cut to a shot of the Plaza Hotel, and it'll tell you New York City, and then it'll cut again, and it'll be like New York City. This movie doesn't take place in any location other than New York City, so I don't know why they would keep reminding you.
Why would it have
Lewisburg.
to?
I guess, well, a prison, yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, again, you would think that would be obvious when he's in prison and then back in the city where, the difference between those two locations.
Yeah, just everything is like copy and paste Wikipedia.
Oh, here's
like
an-
all the establishing lines.
Here's-
Like, might as well have footnotes. In
Here's
them.
another really funny thing about John Gotti, the character, and, like, as he's portrayed in the screenplay. One of the things he says repeatedly throughout the movie, like when he first sees the Sammy the Bull character, he goes, I don't like that guy. I don't trust him. He's never been to jail. And he says it multiple times in the movie. I don't trust anyone who's never been to prison.
And then he's affirmed when Sammy the Bull flips on him. He's like,
Yeah,
I
he-
knew it. You didn't want to go. You didn't go to jail.
But he does trust Sammy the Bull. He put Sammy the Bull in the most important position, and sensitive position he could give it. I mean, I guess he's like me, where he like makes a prediction, then acts otherwise, so you just can't be wrong. Except I don't go to prison when I like call elections or like UFC fights wrong yet.
Yeah. You're
But-
more of a Tommy Patera, I think. Tommy Karate from the
so?
Banana Family. Yeah, you're like a wild card.
Yeah. No, that's what people say when they see me game. It's like sometimes I die 7 times in a row. Sometimes I just drop a 20 bomb.
And like, okay, so this movie does cover a bit of real history, and if like you didn't know about any of this, it would be utterly incomprehensible. But even if you know the slightest, it's more incomprehensible because like there are these big things that happen. Like they show the assassination of Paul Castellano in front of the Sparks Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan, which is like a big thing. This was the moment where Gotti takes over the Gambino family.
The 5 boroughs.
Okay, yeah, and it cuts back to his mentor explaining to him, what it needs to take. And one of the best lines of dialogue in the movie, he goes, "John, I don't got to tell you about New York. You're a New York guy. New York is all the Gambino family. That's who we are. If you're gonna do this, you're gonna need support of all the 5 boroughs: New York, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Bronx, the Queens, Staten Island." Just listing all the 5, but they're pausing to give you that. Let me be clear. There are 57 boroughs. They are Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn. But so Castellano isn't a character in this movie at all.
No, he barely shows up.
So
but-
when he gets killed, you don't feel anything because there's never been even one moment
And-
of tension between him.
Well,
and
the
John
only
Gotti.
thing that passed for a plot was him getting progressively annoyed with Castellano and getting the guys together to kill him. And they never meet. They never have a conversation. They never are shown in any kind of disagreement. It's just sort of, I don't like that guy. Hey, he's not like a real guy. He's not a real gangster. I don't trust him.
That could have been relatable because I feel like Chapo Trap House is kind of like John Gotti and Paul Castellano is Pod Save America.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
You hear that, Positive America? We love going to prison. Yeah, no, it's like I've seen a bunch of Gotti made-for-TV movies because I had a lot of time alone when I was
the one with
16-year-old
Armand
and my parents
Asante
had,
wasn't bad.
premium cable. But in all of them, there's the same thing where it's like, because it's like a Jewish screenwriter who wishes he was in the mob because it would mean he would have more friends and like romanticizes it. And he's like, it's the same thing as like the suburban rap fan who thinks Drake is a pussy. It's like, oh yeah, he was a businessman, Castellano, you fucking pussy, you fucking bitch. And so it's always sort of sympathetic to Gotti just blowing his brains out. And I was expecting something like that, but it was like, what was that one Mystery Science Theater with Mitchell?
Yeah.
Where they're like, Garza, Garza. They're just naming these two Italian guys you never see, and they just don't really figure into the plot, except they are the crucial plot point. Like, in the Arma Desante Gotti movie, there's a scene where the disgusting naked Castellano emerges from the pool, and you see his fat body jiggle about, and I guess the implication to the viewer is like John Gotti would never do that. He would wear like a Victorian bathing costume, or he wouldn't be that girlishly fat or
The
something.
Don never wears shorts.
Right. But with this, it's just like, look at his house. This piece of shit thinks he's cool because he has columns on his house. Well, guess what? He's going to die.
You take the better than me.
But another great piece of New York City mob lore is Vincent the Chin Gigante and his
That's Nick Mullen, by the way.
and his feigned mental illness to avoid prosecution,
Just walking around
and doddering
Manhattan
around in a
pajamas.
dirty bathrobe.
Yeah.
Think about Vincent Gigante today. Just putting a cash.me in his bio. You're like, this guy couldn't be the boss. He's doing another tweet storm.
Again, something that could have been done in a way that made him an interesting character or adversary. Nothing. There's a few recycled shots of him doing the bathrobe routine, shuffling about the streets, and then you get one other scene with him when it's implied that like he car bombed some guys in retaliation. But
And
you
it's a guy that we saw 2 scenes of, and for like 10 minutes after, they're like, I can't believe they killed Frankie. And it's like, there are 7 characters in this movie named Frankie.
Just like Frankie. Yeah.
Including John Gotti's son.
I thought it was funny because one of the scenes he's wearing a suit. So I was just imagining he'd get home from walking around Manhattan in pajamas, and then he'd change into a Valentino suit and just hang out in his apartment in a suit. Can we talk about the marketing campaign of this movie?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
So the Twitter. So have you guys like checked out the Twitter page for the Gotti movie?
No.
Oh, the Twitter. So the Twitter page it has embodied this like it's like a mafia, like a tough guy Italian guys running their Twitter page, and when they get criticized by like film geeks and stuff, they'll be like, hey, pussy, come over here.
Oh, we just put 10 dimes on film Crit Hulk's head. Watch out! You shoot at him, don't miss. You wouldn't like him when he's angry.
Okay, so there's this one critic who very aptly. So this movie is the first film that's being distributed by MoviePass, right? And MoviePass, I have it, but it's going to go out of business unless they.
It's a doomed
it's the
concept.
dumbest business idea.
Idiot.
Simultaneously,
Venture
it's the
capital
best.
idiocy.
Yeah,
at its
yeah.
best.
But so then they decided, okay, we're going to distribute films, and we're going to have a second revenue stream that way, as opposed to us just losing money by paying for. I mean,
Other
I
people's
saw like
movies.
15 movies last month.
Yeah.
For $10, which is less than even one movie
Yeah.
ticket. Anyway, so everyone who has MoviePass got a push notification sometime around last week, which just said, Gotti, the critics hate it, the audiences love it. Like, how about you see for yourself, right? Then if you go on Rotten Tomatoes, it is currently at a 0%.
Yep.
It is at like a 99% audience score. And the reason is because there are a ton, like thousands of people who saw this movie and then decided, they were so passionate about this movie, they decided they were going to create a profile on Rotten Tomatoes and then give it a 5-star review. So that led people to believe that, okay, they are fixing the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. And to the extent that I think The Incredibles came out the same week as it, and it got slightly, I think it made like $1 billion, like bajillion dollars. Gotti only had slightly fewer audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes. So basically, this whole marketing campaign was that they made a bunch of fake profiles on Rotten Tomatoes, and everyone gave it 5-star reviews, and they marketed it in the vein of like the whole Trump, you can't trust the media, you can't trust, it's all fake news. And that's like sort of the way they've gone about it. It has been a failure. I think they made $1 million like opening weekend.
So you're saying there's an Italian-American troll farm.
Exactly. I don't know nothing about that.
I'm going to become like the Eric Garland, but against Italians. Sir, unhand our democracy with your greasy hand.
A bunch of guys in a bunker just on the internet 24 hours a day drinking straight from Prego bottles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like this gets into like what is also interesting about this movie as a stand-in for the Times is that like this is like the Donald Trump movie.
Yes.
Oh, it's like Gotti
in every
is
respect.
a stand-in for Donald Trump, both like the way he's portrayed and the like moral confusion and degeneracy of the film itself, in that it portrays this obviously evil man as some sort of hero or person worthy of admiration or respect.
Because the only way they can evaluate actions is by a series of like 3 or 4 fucking bumper stickers that they've memorized about like, it's about family and hey, you take care of the community. The same way they are for Trump, and it's like, he's a businessman or whatever. Like they only have like these very small concepts that they apply to this guy.
Yeah, this movie is for people that have a tattoo on their body that just says family, but only talk to their uncle because they think they'll inherit a Zippo that they believe to be solid gold.
Well, this gets to we mentioned before this movie's overuse of stock footage of from real newscasts, and maybe my favorite point in the
Testimonials.
movie is the real testimonials that are real local news footage.
And before you do this, I want everyone to go around this room and name an Italian American you respect.
Oh no, we
Could
have
you
to
put in
do
some
that.
cricket sound effects? No, but this is a real news footage from when Gotti died in 2002. And there's this real news footage from Howard Beach, and they were talking to these real teenagers and people from the neighborhood, all lining up to say, I don't care what anyone says, Gotti's a good guy, he kept the streets safe, he had class, he's not like these bad criminals nowadays. And I actually saw, speaking of the Twitter campaign, I saw someone on Twitter reply to the Gotti account, whose handle was like deplorable MAGA USA #1, to say, Gotti was a good guy. When he was around, Queens was clean and safe, not like it is now, which is ludicrous because the crime rate in Queens in the 80s was probably 10,000 times higher than it is
Queens
today.
is maybe one of the safest parts of the world right now.
Yeah,
like
no.
that's insane.
Crime has dropped so significantly. Since
I saw another deplorable account reply to someone saying, if Gotti was around today, he'd have more followers than any of these Hollywood goofballs.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Gotti would beat Ninja on Twitch.
They think of him the same way they think of Trump, because the thing is, all these guys going, he was a boss, he was a great boss. He was an objectively shitty criminal. He sucked at crime.
Yeah, even if
he
you're
got in and out of jail all the time, and then he fucking did even within the code of the mafia, by killing his boss, he committed a violation of their code.
But he was a pussy.
And then almost immediately he starts going. I mean, yeah, it took him a while to convict him, but he was basically on trial for like the entire time he was boss, and then he went to prison for life and died there. He's a shitty fucking criminal.
I mean, it's better than ISIS.
But he was on TV all the time. It's the same way they think Trump is a great businessman, even though his entire career is just a bunch of money laundering schemes and bankruptcies. He was on TV all the time. So, of course, he was a good businessman.
Also, speaking to his leadership, also like all the guys in his crew turned out to be rats.
Yes.
Like, all of them were informants.
Yeah, it's like, I keep people close. Like everyone, you have the door literally like just flapping open.
Can
and
you
anyone can come in.
imagine, like, John Gotti, throughout the movie, he makes a bunch of like weird moral points about how he's going to beat the government, including refusing comfort medication when he's dying.
Yes.
Which is like, yeah, just imagine a federal prosecutor going like, he didn't take Ativan? Oh, I'm so owned. But he actually did get over on the government because every single person he talked to every day was wired. And can you imagine the asinine bullshit?
Oh my God.
They probably got some version of CTE just listening to this, the conversations all the time.
Guys just
hey,
saying,
I think, they invented eating pussy about 1935. They didn't have it before that. Now you look now.
That would be.
I'm not racist, but
That would have been way better though, because they didn't even have any kind of like attempts, almost like one or two attempts at like giving the language any kind of color. They were just talking about mob stuff in just these things like, oh, we got to have a sit down with the capos, just that kind of stuff, or saying got mafia wisdom. Like there's one where Stacy Keach goes, "The boss is the boss is the boss," and you're like, "Oh yeah, damn right." And then they think that's so fucking insightful that later on in the voiceover, Gotti goes, my boss Neil used to say, "The boss is the boss is the boss." It's like, in case you didn't catch that absolutely meaningless fucking slogan that is just literally a tautology, I'm going to say it one more time because this is what passes for like wisdom and insight here into this
movie
code
was
of
written.
morality.
This movie was written on the toilet. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a scene where Ruggiero, there's one alpha bald fat guy, and that's Stacy Keach, and one beta one, and that's
Who, by the way, I want to point out was played by Pruitt Taylor Vince, who is a big
Southerner.
hillbilly.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
from Louisiana, and he tries at the beginning to do like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And it's like, "Oh, okay." But then as soon as the movie wears on and he has to do scenes where he's yelling, he just completely drops it. And so he's just going like, "Look, John, I'm telling you, there's no way that them FBI guys heard what we were talking about."
oh, John, they bugged my can of candied peaches. Because they explain this in the most confusing way possible, but Ruggiero fucks up in some way, and because he tries to kill Anthony Casso, Caspipe, who's a fascinating character that we see 2 fucking scenes of, but Vincent Gigante wants to kill the beta fat guy. And Gotti's like, "No, I'm just going to put him on the shelf because he loves being in the mob so much."
You love the life.
There's a heartbreaking scene that's similar to like, it's like Old Yeller.
Yeah.
Or it's like Harry and the Hendersons. Get
out of here! We don't want you here.
Where they're like, "You can't come to our shitty building where we sit down all day anymore."
In
and
the back
he looks
of a
like
store.
He wants to kill himself. They're like, You cannot come to the store that doesn't sell anything anymore. And you are fired from the mob, sir. And he looks like all of his children died in front of him because he can't sit on a folding chair and go, "Hey, how about the Bills this year?" anymore.
I feel like, and then the movie says that like he dies like 2 months later and
Of
like
cancer.
The VO should have just said it was cancer, but he really died of a broken heart.
didn't.
It literally
Did
says
say that?
It said that. You don't remember that?
Yeah.
He literally said
and then,
that.
And then the following scene is my favorite scene in the movie, where it's one line. It's John Travolta looking at his friend's tombstone, and he's like, "Hey, you fucked up. Sorry about that. Now you're dead. Okay,
That's
bye."
so Trump. That is so Trump. If Jared like dies in prison, Trump is going to be like, "Emotional day," and then he just goes to Jared's mausoleum and he's like, "Well, who would have guessed that you would be outlived by me? Funny how things work out." It's just so Trump. But I think we should sort of circle the drain here, circle to the ending, and talk about what this movie because the first half of the movie, or first 3/4 of the movie is about what a cool guy John Gotti is. The last quarter of it is about how cool his son is. And we know that the son is supposed to be cool because in the movie, he's like the hunk from a 90s teen show.
Yeah, his
Like
spiky hair.
Spiky hair, he's like low body fat. Whereas in real life, John Gotti's idiot son, looked like a Goomba from Super Mario. Just a hideous bowling pin shaped man. But in this movie, he's just like in excellent shape.
And the kid, it's not like they got that guy for his fucking acting ability because he might have been the worst performance.
I
in
was
the entire
convinced
movie.
that actor was like a not professional.
I thought
actor.
there's no way this guy's an actor. He was so bad.
Oh,
He was a contest. He was a contest winner.
He's like,
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like they definitely scouted him from like the Fuck Team 5 franchise. He has a porn actor written all over. Johnny
totally.
Sins would have done a better job. man.
Absolutely.
100%.
Can we go back to gas pipe for a second?
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Then we can talk
Uh,
about the John A. Gotti.
Yeah,
storyline.
yeah. Mike, could you tell us the thing you told me about the real gas pipe and that 6 to Ed Bradley interview with him?
So it's
First,
on,
like, tell us who a gas pipe actually was.
Anthony Gaspipe Casso was the underboss of the Lucchese family, and he was like, he tried to kill Gotti with that bomb, and then Ruggiero tried to kill him. But there's an interview on YouTube of Ed Bradley talking to Gaspipe, and he's asking about these 2 Long Island guys who own like a garbage carting business, and the gas pipe killed, and he was like, "These are family men who are trying to make a living." He's like, "What do you say to that?" And gas pipe's like, "Well, I mean, I didn't know their family, so I don't know nothing about it." And there's a lot of great moments in that interview, like gas pipe. Like he made a deal with the government, and then the government like reneged on it because he was like smuggling cheese into the jail and stuff and getting in fights. And he's like, they betrayed me, and I just think of my daughter. He's like crying on the interview.
But like to underscore again, this is a guy who has dozens of murders on him, like like murder, torture, executions. Like
Gaspipe was sociopathic, like for the mob.
Yeah,
like he was notorious, like in there. He was a terrifying guy and an amazing character. But again, if you only reference him from the movie, it's like, oh, that's sort of like the ratty looking dude who tortured somebody who we never see again. But
one scene he had was pretty cool, though. I thought
when he's torturing the guy, yeah, they got
in the meat locker. Yeah,
I mean, it's like the guy that got to play him. That guy should play Gaspipe in a movie that wasn't produced by an AI for sure. But yeah,
the Google Deep Dream algorithm.
yeah. This movie was made by the Microsoft AI that had to be suspended from Twitter because it kept posting racial slurs automatically.
So you think the movie's ending because the movie has been structured around these really incoherent flashbacks, but it is the spine of it are these scenes of Gotti when he's with terminal cancer in prison trying to convince his son not to take a plea deal on charges that he had and go to trial because you gotta be a man. You gotta stand up.
There's real footage of that, and that footage is like super interesting because it's Gotti telling his son like, "I would never lay down. I would never like putting the life above his own family and
just being
else.
a complete piece of shit,
right?" Which really shows you who he was.
Yeah. And then they argue, and the son's like, "I want closure, Dad." And he's like, "No, you gotta be a man." And then at the end, he's like, "Don't do it." And he leaves, and then they show the kid signing papers, and you're like, okay, I guess he took the deal, even though he literally just spent the entire movie being told not to. And then, that's basically, that's it. He's like, "Closure, that's for guys who got too much education and not enough brains. Good ass with your closure." But he leaves. And then they show him on the gurney in a hilarious scene, like they're trying to get him into like hospice, and he won't take pain meds. And they're like, "Why don't we just let you put you into a coma? You know, this hurts so much." And he's like,
he's Robert Mueller.
And he's like, "Every day I'm in here is a fuck you to the feds." And then he dies, and you're like, okay, the movie's over. And then it decides it's going to follow the legal travails of John Jr. And it's like you're like, wait a minute, he signed the deal, I'm assuming, but then no, he's out and he's on trial.
Yeah.
And then he gets acquitted, and then he's out again, and then he like has a scene where he just goes into a garage and yells at some people who you have literally no idea who they are.
And their argument is incomprehensible.
Gibberish.
It's just like he goes in there, he's like, "I'm in here because my dad told me to be here." And they're like, "Yeah, well, who's saying that?" "I'm saying that." "Okay, well, then I guess you make the rules." "Yeah, I also make the respect." "Okay, fuck you."
And then he goes back on trial, and
it's like, what dialogue tree do I take to get that?
All it is the movie is explicitly saying that this kid, this poor guy, is being railroaded by the feds, that they're harassing him, and that they won't let him go, even
The
though
government is the real gangsters.
she says that. Kelly Preston says that. "You're the real gangsters." And then it closes on a fucking title card that says, John Gotti Jr. was charged over 50 times with crimes, even though he was repeatedly acquitted. The government made deals with bad guys and let him out on the street in exchange for testimony. He just wants to be left alone. I mean, it just becomes an explicit plea for the government to leave him alone or get a pardon from Trump, which might happen, honestly. And it's like, what the fuck happened? Where did this movie come from? And it's like, you're trying to tell me that this is an unjust prosecution, but one of the scenes in this film is of John Jr. swearing an oath to become a made member of the Gambino
but
family.
He left, which is never showed.
They don't show that.
Never showed or expressed until his lawyer is making his final plea, which is like, "Come on, let him go."
Yeah.
And the jury's like, "Yeah, okay.
Yeah, cool.
I like to think the government, like, they were in that garage that day, and they're like, "We got you. You did one day of the Mafia. We're going to prosecute you for that forever." But yeah, no, it's just like, John A. Gotti, later in the movie, he's in this sprawling Mcmansion, this like idiotic estate. And it's, he has kids now. He's married to the girl that he met at the disgusting
She's
barbecue.
beautiful.
She's a fucking
You look like my
mother.
mother.
Beautiful.
But
Exactly.
yeah, so it's this huge house, and it's implied that it's like unfair that the cops are arresting him. But it's like, okay, how did he get that house? Like, what did he like pass his Series 7?
He's a job creator.
Yeah, it just never explained like how or why or when he left the mafia. It's just like,
Or what being in the mafia is.
He quit
at
as
all.
of the start of this trial. Let him go.
It's like it's hard to imagine what you could quit because it's just people having brunch. It's just people
That's the
sitting
point.
around.
That is the point. Is like the coolest part of Sopranos is that they like do all these crimes and they're like protection rackets and murders and like all these things. But essentially, like what they do it to support is not like having big houses or like fancy cars. They do it so they can hang out in a boys' club with like in a clubhouse with their fellas. They do it so they could be in a frat, but like
Yeah.
for their entire lives.
Yeah.
And that is like there's like a kind of like a they think that they're like were spit on when they came over in Ellis Island. They had to work, and they like always talk about how hard they work, but essentially they really just hang out with other adult men all day.
yeah, Tony's. That was like the most clever thing in this brand. It was what a fucking great, clever show. But like when Tony always bitches about how hard he works, and it's like the previous scene is him eating like him at like 2:00. I could go for another lunch.
This is about. You're right. This movie is. It shows you what the allure of the mafia is hanging out with your buddies. But the problem is the real downfall, even among downfalls, is that it doesn't even look like any fun.
Yeah.
Like nobody says anything funny. They don't do anything. They don't even like drink or play cards mostly.
We don't even see John Gotti cheat on his wife.
Yeah,
I
he
was
never
gonna
has
say,
sex.
There
There's
was no
strippers.
goo mods. There was
There's
no
no-
cigarettes in the whole
They
movie.
don't go to the Copa.
Yeah.
They're like there's one scene where they're just like joylessly sitting in a disco, and that's it.
Yeah, they went. John Gotti went to the club with Neil so he could point out people he didn't like.
Yes.
And would later hire and rat
He's
on.
like, yeah, it's like, get these whores out of the way. I want to point out these guys, and I don't like the look of them.
show
over
me
there.
another disgusting guy that I'm going to trust for some reason, who I hate on first sight.
I love it. He's just gossiping.
Yeah, he's Trump. That's also Trump.
Yes.
Trump.
He's just
Trump
a
probably
gossipy
goes
bitch.
to the Oval Office with like Don McGahn and is like, "Who's that guy?" And they're like, "That's literally your Secretary of Treasury." I don't like him. I don't trust guys that haven't been on TV.
I want someone following him.
Yeah, it just doesn't look like fun.
Here's the thought, though. Has the power and membership of the mob gone down because of aggressive federal prosecution or because of the availability of gaming and podcasting and the accessibility of male friendships later in life?
That's true.
I think that's actually.
If I didn't have you guys, I wouldn't know what I would do. I might have to join the mafia.
Yeah. I think about
We
my
do.
gaming
We-
clan. I
we
think
are
about
the
you
mafia.
guys. I think about the other fair podcasting family in Brooklyn. The podcasting family in Queens.
de la Com. We're all wearing athleisure.
Yeah.
And like comfortable velours.
I'm sort of fucking stupid, but I'm very confident when I say things. I don't really work that hard, but I'm always complaining.
Yeah, that is who this movie is for. More than anybody, more than any like general subset of Italians or Trump voters or anything. It's a very specific group of men like Kyle Smith who like the idea of the mafia because it's where they could be with their friends all the time. Like those are the people who are like, yeah, that's why there's no crime. That's why there's no actual mob stuff because
So when
that's
women
not what they
complain-
actually care about. They care about being in a room with your friends, being in a big, dimly, poorly lit room. By the way, because they literally
Exactly
did not,
where we are right now.
Right.
like, yes, but as somebody who's watching a movie, I would appreciate even lighting keys so that you can see people's faces in the middle of the frame. Every interior scene in this movie has a big black spot in the middle where all the people's features or clothing become totally indistinct because they just didn't light the space.
It's negative space. I think it's actually an art house decision.
You know
You
what?
can tell that
There-
Kevin Connolly is a fan of
Ephraim-
cinema verite.
E from Entourage.
No, it's true. He it's amazing. At 2 points in this movie, he accidentally does an homage to Michael Mann and Robert Altman. Like there's a scene where there's a bar fight that has the overlapped, indistinct dialogue and jittery camera of a
Robert
classic
Altman.
Altman movie.
Yeah.
But obviously totally accidentally. And then there's another scene where John and John Jr. are walking down a flight of spiral stairs, and the camera, instead of like following them down with their faces forward while they're talking, like is behind their back and following them from behind, and you just see the back of their head, and it's like a tracking shot in a man movie. Once again, totally accidental. It's amazing. It really is like you gave a fucking monkey a goddamn.
I really think a
typewriter
Chinese
and
got me.
That's a horrible thing to say about an Irish director.
Oh, can I tell you an
Bog
entourage,
ape, I'm
a
sorry.
little entourage gossip?
Yes.
I saw Vinny from Entourage at a coffee shop by my old apartment, and he asked them to turn the music down.
That's respect.
That's
Depending on what
They're
music,
playing-
depending on what music they're playing, that's either respect or a lack of respect.
That's some page 3 shit right there. Juicy.
But there was a tweet recently that went viral. It was like a group of white men is called the podcast, and everyone was like, "Yeah, but if we didn't have those podcasts, we'd be shooting each other."
Exactly. I would be exactly like Meyer Lansky.
Yeah.
Adam would be Bugsy Siegel.
Of course,
Bugsy Siegel.
Bug Chaser
absolutely.
Siegel.
The bug. Adam
I didn't
the
even
bug.
think about that. I'm sorry. I did not even think about that. What everyone always replies to you with on Twitter when you're just trying to have a good post.
I don't know what you're talking about. The bug.
I mean, I think I'd aspire to sort of a Legs Diamond figure.
Okay,
you know?
yeah,
Irish,
Irishman,
bootleg,
yeah.
Irish bootlegging.
Dutch Schultz.
Yeah,
He's good.
yeah.
I'll be him, loud and excitable and killed in the bathroom, most likely. That's where I will likely die. Actuarially, I will likely die in a bathroom like Dutch Schultz. But we would be the worst mob. I mean, what
Oh my
crimes would
God.
we... What could we even think? Like, what hustles could we possibly put together to make?
All
money?
right, so you do
Hey,
one podcast that's free, and then you do another one.
Right, but that's legal, baby.
They forget about the money they gave you.
Here's how
That's
you make
racketeering.
Here's how you make it illegal. You slander somebody every episode.
Ah, yes.
Hey,
You know what this movie was
Agent
like?
Napoleon, nice podcast. You pay us for the privilege of putting it out
That
every
just
month.
every time someone is polite to us and like subscribes to our Patreon from their podcast, we're like, that's respect. They're not just being polite because they met us once.
I know. I think if we did try to become an actual mob, crew to trying to earn, like, I'm honestly thinking it would be things like lying to Grubhub to get the free order refund, but you keep the food, and then pays for itself.
It's smart. You think about it. You take the expensive food out of there, boom. One of the
Yeah.
biggest costs of living.
Yeah, it adds up. Let me tell you. You
know
just
this
got to
movie
got to get them on the phone. You go, yeah, it never showed up. I don't know what you're talking about. I never got it.
You know what this reminded me of? Do you remember that episode of Sopranos where they're all hanging out? I think it's when Paulie gets out of jail and they're having a party and they're making Silvio. They're like, Silvio, do it, please, do it. And he's like, Silvio, just in his normal voice. He doesn't change his voice at all. He goes, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. And everyone's like, that sounds exactly like Godfather. Oh my God. They're all freaking out. But that's like that scene for an hour and 45 minutes is this movie.
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just people doing impressions of other mob movies.
Yeah.
Just like 100 Italian men doing De Niro scowls.
Yep.
And it's just like, but it's not, but in no way is it anything like what is good about any of these movies.
I mean, I guess just like in summation, Gotti is now the movie for everyone who used to look up to De Niro because of Goodfellas
Yes.
and Raging
Well,
Bull.
real
Fuck Trump.
Italians disowned him a long time ago.
Yeah, he had certain preferences that not acceptable.
Forbidden by the church.
That's what's amazing is that Italians
Not holy.
invented
Yeah.
they were like in the modern context the first people to be like, yeah, they're getting rid of white people.
Yeah.
So I would just say, in summation, like with Gotti was actually one of the most extraordinary movies I've ever
Amazing.
seen. I would say run, don't walk to see Gotti. You're gonna love it.
And if you see a critic, do not hesitate to do the most profitable mob activity
Yeah,
by
get 'em.
killing them with 20 witnesses.
And I just again,
Don't worry, you get to go to the dentist in
Just
prison.
if you want to, sit in a dank, dimly lit room with other badly dressed men arguing over what food to eat, incessantly doing movie quotes back and forth to one another, and generally being a drain on society, you can either join the Mafia or start a podcast.
I also want to say that as someone who's like a fan of the show, and like I did come from that kind of like Italian fascist upbringing, where you can't disrespect people. But one thing I respect about you guys is your lack of respect and how you're not afraid to like go after people. You know?
Yeah.
I'm afraid to do that stuff.
I mean,
thank you for
sometimes.
respecting our disrespect.
You got it.
and I thank you for that. Unless, of course, literally any member of the Gambino crime family finds this episode, listens to it, I retroactively take back. and disavow
I've always
everything I
respected
said.
your guys' work. I think
I
you
just
guys
wanna
do a lot
say-
more than argue about cold cuts.
Adam's address is
Yeah.
take it up with him.
He told us to do this. We're scared of him.
I just want to say publicly that one person that I disrespect is Mr. Donald Jessica Trump. And, and I think that we strayed a little bit from politics on this podcast today,
Little
but it's important that we remember that we have to disrespect him by calling him orange and being rude to him and cheese doodly, like a sort of a Ned Flanders kind of insult. So just keep resisting. That's all I got to say.
Maybe the Gotti people fucked up by making this the Trump movie. Maybe if it was like a resistance movie and it was about Gotti doing a deal with Trump, and Gotti's like, "Whoa, I'm bad, but can you imagine if this guy was president?"
I thought I was a freaking crook.
That's how you get that. Make the resistance mafia movie.
Oh,
Cut
God.
this.
chilling,
I have
man.
$1 billion idea.
No, I'm just last words from me. I give this film 10 out of 10 gabagools and 11 and a half prosciuttos. Mwah.
My final review, honestly, if like Lars von Trier or one of those other fucking stupid Europeans made a movie this confusing, people would say it's genius. So I give it 10 out of 10.